Hello everyone, this is part 23 of What If Naruto and Hinata trained together and a spark happened, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Is it just the two of you? The deep voice rumbled from the shadows. More or less, Kakashi answered glibly. What does that mean? The hidden shinobi growled dangerously. It means we don't trust you, Tsunade said smugly, then she flashed the ninjutsu scrolls they were carrying. These are reinforcement talismans. If they are cut, torn, or get even a drop of our blood on them, a ninja tied to the scroll will be summoned instantly. So while we came alone as we agreed, if this is a trap we can have you outnumbered in a heartbeat. I guess Itachi was right. Kisame Hoshigaki stepped into the moonlight. You are smarter than law, pain gives you credit for. As per their agreement, he was not carrying his samehada, but his arms were folded into the expansive sleeves of his coat, concealing them to the point where he could have held a short sword in each hand. But then, I should have known better than to doubt Uchiha, the Akatsuki agent added. So what is this all about? Itachi watched the mist rogue carefully, but kept his tone firmly neutral. You know Itachi is dead, right? The swordsman prompted, and both Leaf Shinobi nodded slowly in response. I am here to fulfill his will. Itachi's will. Tsunade frowned, surprised and also annoyed because of the shock. Right, Kisame grinned at him, showing his pointed teeth. Uchiha asked me to do two things in the event of his death. The first I already took care of. You found Itachi's sword with the old man, right? Yes, Kakashi answered simply. Good, the shark responded. I figured if I left it there, you guys would take it. Does that mean you were there during the fight? Tsunade demanded sternly. No, Kisame said after a moment's consideration. I found the old man after everything was done. Just Master Jiraiya? Kakashi asked, more evenly than his leader. Are you saying that Itachi's body wasn't there? That's right. It was just the toad and Itachi's blade. Then how do you know for sure he's dead? Tsunade prompted expectantly. Because Pain told us Uchiha was dead, and he had Uchiha's Akatsuki ring. Tsunade deflated, her hopes dashed. And even Kakashi slumped slightly. Anyway, it took me a little while to retrieve the second item and slip away, Hoshigaki continued, then he chuckled and added, they didn't trust me anymore, for some reason. Itachi's last request of me, the swordsman sobered, was that if he died, I was to bring his daughter to the hidden leaf village for Kakashi Hatake to raise. And then he unfolded his arms, revealing an infant of no more than 8 months of age. The girl had a short crop of dark green hair, and she yawned, looking around with eyes black as the night sky. Kisame actually smiled gently at the child, then he stepped closer, extending her. The Hokage moved forward quickly and took the baby. She carefully set the girl down on a flat patch of grass, kneeling over her as she began to give the infant a medical examination. Then the renegade took out an envelope and tossed it to Kakashi. Hatake opened the letter and started to read out loud. Kakashi Hatake, the copy ninja read, cliché though it is to write, if you are reading this, I am dead. I have entrusted my partner Kisame with delivering my daughter to the Konohagakure. I humbly request that you become her father. There are only 3 people left in this world with the Sharingan, and you are the only one I can trust. Madara is out of the question, and my brother has gone too far down our ancestors' path for me to trust him with my child. Please raise her and teach her how to use this power for the good of our village. I am hoping you can lead her away from the arrogant and vengeful nature that so often gripped my clan. Thank you. Itachi Uchiha. P.S. My daughter's name is Rei Uchiha, and her birth date is September the 15th. Why did you do this? Kakashi tucked the letter into his vest and addressed Kisame. What's in it for you? Surely the Akatsuki would reward you. I'm not with them anymore, the former Mist Ninja growled angrily. My loyalty was always to Itachi. He saved my life, and was the only one who treated me like a human. Just what does that mean? The Hokage questioned, trying not to yell in front of the baby. He really didn't tell you, huh? Kisame was amazed. I thought for sure he would. Why do you think I looked like this? The renegade demanded, though he too kept his voice under control. Do you think I have gills and this sandpaper gray skin by choice? Of course not. I am the Jinchuriki of the seven-finned shark. Kakashi blinked in amazement, and Tsunade regarded the rogue with guarded curiosity. After our failed coup of the Hidden Mist village, those of you who survived were forced to scatter, the demon-carrying rogue explained, and within a month, I was captured by the Akatsuki. This was early on, before Deidara, Kakazu, or even Zetsu joined the group. They found me, and planned to extract the demon and seal it in an amulet until their statue was ready to hold the seventh Bayu. But Itachi saved me. Kisame was calmed by the memory. He argued that killing me would be a waste, that someone with my skill and aggression could serve as a member of the Akatsuki, until they needed the seven fins to finish their plan. Pain agreed, but made Itachi responsible for me. Despite that, Uchiha never treated me like a monster or a prisoner. I was his partner and we were equals, more or less. And before long we became friends, after a fashion. That's why I'm doing this, Hoshigaki said pointedly. I owe Itachi, and I'm done with the Akatsuki. With them getting so close to the goals, my usefulness is running out fast, especially without Itachi sponsoring me. She appears to be healthy. Tsunade stood, holding the infant gently, though I will need to give her a more complete examination when we get back to the village. Then she glared at the demon container, snapping gently, not that I believe any of this. How could Itachi have a daughter without us knowing? I was the only one who knew he was married. Kisame smiled smugly. He never told anyone else, so Pain and Madara wouldn't find out about Erika. Not that it did him any good in the end. Itachi was married. Kakashi goggled at the possibility. Explain, the Hokage demanded. Kisame faked a sigh, obviously amused by his superior knowledge. As I'm sure you both know, the Raikage has been obsessed with capturing the Kekkei Genkai of other shinobi villages, he began. Both nodded, familiar with the attempt to kidnap Hinata Hyuga. Well, about 6 years ago, he sent one of his agents to infiltrate the lower ranks of the Akatsuki for the express purpose of extracting Itachi's genetic material and bringing it back to the Hidden Cloud village. The memory pleased the shark Jinchuriki, but Uchiha saw right through Erika's attempts to entice him. He knew what she was, and what her mission was, so he kept her at bay. That pretty much mystified Erika. No one had ever resisted her considerable charms before, Hoshigaki continued. After taking a drink from his canteen, she started to fall for Itachi for real, and at the same she began to realize how much better she had it away from the Raikage. Meanwhile, despite knowing what she was, Itachi found himself in love with Erika too. He saw the lost, kind-hearted woman under the seductress. He wanted to give her the chance to be her true self, like he could not. Finally, she came clean about her mission, and renounced the Hidden Cloud village. Of course, it was pretty much impossible to lie to an Uchiha, so he knew she was sincere, and they started dating. May 11th would have been their 4th anniversary. Kisame seemed almost saddened to report, they were married in a simple, secret ceremony. It was just the two of them, the priest, and me. They faked Erika's death so she could be free of the Akatsuki and the Raikage. And for a time, it looked like it would work. About 16 months ago, she got pregnant at last. Itachi was ecstatic, well, for him, anyway. But in the middle of January, Madara killed Erika. The Mist traitor snarled. He told Itachi he caught her sneaking into Itachi's home, and assumed she was a spy or assassin. Itachi never really believed him, but played along. Fortunately, Madara left Rei alive. We weren't sure if he didn't know about her, or if he had some other reason to let her live. I suspected Madara knew killing both of them would push Itachi too far, but Itachi believed Madara wanted his bloodline continued. It was then that Itachi asked me to bring Rei here if anything happened to him. Given my life debt to him, it was the least I could do. What will you do now? Kakashi asked evenly. What difference does it make to you? The shark grunted defensively. You'll be on the run from the Akatsuki. Tsunade followed Kakashi's thinking. We could offer you sanctuary in the Hidden Leaf village. Yeah, I'm sure you have a nice safe prison cell waiting for me. Kisame shook his head. Thanks but no thanks. We could make you come back with us, Kakashi suggested. So this is your vaulted honor. The Akatsuki renegade appeared to enjoy the threat, violating a seal of truce. Well, you can try it, but can you fight while taking care of Rei? This isn't some movie where you can juggle her around. Are you saying you would attack a baby? Itachi's daughter. Tsunade was horrified, but Kisame simply shrugged. I've fulfilled my promise, he said viciously. I'd rather not hurt the kid, but if you have no honor, then I see no reason to leave his daughter in your hands. Kisame tensed, and soon had reached for the talismans, but then Hitachi interrupted them. Let him go, Kakashi advised. Kakashi, what are you saying? The Hokage struggled between yelling at him and not upsetting Ray. He's an S-rank criminal with a tailed beast inside him, the copy ninja explained, so holding him will be next to impossible anyways. Besides, Hitachi grinned under his mask, it's better for us if he leaves anyway. Kisame looked at the leaf ninja with a little more respect, and soon had nodded as she caught on to his reasoning. If both he and Naruto are in the hidden leaf village, Kakashi clarified anyway, then that is twice the incentive for the Akatsuki to focus on us. But if this guy is out there, on the run, he might be a bigger priority than Naruto. Not only is his Bayu easier to contain, he's also a traitor who took one of their precious rings. Fine, he may go, Tsunade waved her empty hand dismissively. You're not that dumb after all, Kisame grunted, maybe Itachi's decision wasn't all based on empty sentiment. Goodbye, Ray, Kisame added, almost fondly, I don't think I'll probably see you again. The two-leaf shinobi made no move to stop him as he vanished back into the night. We need to go back, Tsunade ordered, the girl needs a full battery of tests to confirm what Kisame claimed. I'll catch up with you, Kakashi said, troubled, there is something I need to do first. Yugao was awakened. With her first thought she recognized the knock at her door. In the second she realized it was just after 2 in the morning. The shinobi slipped out of bed, pulling on her robe and slipping her hand into the secret pocket housing a single kunai. She doubted there was a need for the weapon, but was too well trained to be caught off guard. She opened the door a crack, revealing her lover. Seeing the troubled expression he wore, she quickly opened the portal the rest of the way to allow him entry. Kakashi, what's going on? She asked after relocking her apartment, shouldn't you be resting for the trials today? The Hokage and I received a special summons this afternoon, he explained, I just returned from the meeting now. She nodded, waiting for him to continue. Kakashi struggled to speak, and this made Yugao more apprehensive. These past 3 years with you have been good for me, he said softly, our relationship has exactly been normal. More like casual exclusive, but we've both been hurt in the past, so it has worked for us. Still, we've been able to support each other, and I haven't been this happy since, well, for a long time. But I can't do this anymore, he turned away from her, I'm sorry, Yugao. What's all this about? She asked carefully, I can't believe you would wake me up in the middle of the night to break up with me. What happened at this meeting? He did not answer immediately, and tried to get back to the door. She blocked his way, and he started to use ninjutsu to escape, but her voice stopped him. I'm not going to let you run away from me, Kakashi Hitachi, she told him directly, I love you too much. She froze, having never told him before. He looked at her intently, his uncovered eye wide with shock. I love you, she said again, and if you won't tell me what is going on, I'll find out on my own. And you know me, you know my skills. I will uncover the truth. Exhaling in defeat, he walked over to her dining area and slumped into a chair. I thought this was the best way to handle things. I can't keep doing this anymore, and I didn't want to pressure you into something more. Something more. Her voice caught. She started to ask him what he meant, but he was already explaining. I'm going to be a father, he said, and her eyes turned angry. Realizing his mistake, he quickly continued, I didn't mean it like that. I've been asked to raise the daughter of a fallen comrade, and unless it turns out to be a trap, I plan to accept. That's why I can't have this kind of fling anymore. Not if I'm going to be a parent. And so you assumed what? She said angrily, that I would want a serious relationship with you. That I'd flee from the mere mention of a child. Kakashi, she said more gently, sitting beside him and taking his hand, I do love you. You said our relationship has worked, but I've been think that we're just hiding, just taking the easy way. We've been together longer than I was with Hayate and longer than you were with Rin. I think it's time to face the fact that this is more than just a fling or comfort. Then she smiled wryly, and informed him, and if you are going to raise this girl, you are definitely going to need a woman's touch. You don't know all of it, not yet. Kakashi took his hand back and faced her seriously, the child's name is Rei Uchiha. She is Itachi's daughter. Azuki blinked twice, unsure what to do with his announcement. Hitaki told her the rest of the story, the truth about Itachi's betrayal and death, and the meeting with Kisame. And I'm not sure how the Hokage intends to spin this, Kakashi concluded. Will she release the truth about Itachi, or try to keep Rei's parentage a secret? Or most likely, she will let it be known who Rei is, without revealing the other secrets, leaving me to deal with the circus that follows. It would be Naruto all over again, Yugao said thoughtfully. Not quite the same, but yeah, he agreed, and that's why I wanted to keep you out of this. Too bad, she said, I'm not going anywhere. Come, she instructed, standing, let's go see your daughter. The elder Jonin did not move, and she looked at him warily, waiting for his next protest. Yugao, he interrupted blandly, you might want to get dressed first. She colored slightly, and turned to her dresser. Before she could take a step, he caught her up in his arms, and kissed her. It's a year or more too late, he divulged when they broke apart, but I love you too. The door finally opened. Shizune exited first, followed by a thinly built woman in her early 50s, with long hair, of a cyan so pale it was nearly white. Her eyes settled briefly on Kakashi and Yugao, appraising them with an unsettling whiteness. Then the Hokage emerged, and she stopped before the couple. She held the last Uchiha gently in her arms. The child was asleep and was wrapped in a fresh blanket. Hiroko Hyuga, Kakashi noted worriedly, the cursebreaker. It was just a precaution, Tsunade reassured them. And, Yugao prompted, she is a normal, healthy, adorable girl, the Sannin answered, she is not under the effects of any jutsu. And we ran the genetic tests. She is Itachi's daughter, and she does possess the Sharingan. So what are you going to do? Their leader asked cannily. I'm going to be her father, he answered, taking the girl, and with your permission, Yugao interjected. We will move into the Uchiha estate to do so, he continued, it is rightfully Rei's, and I think that's where she belongs. Besides, my current place doesn't exactly have the room. I'll have to confer with the clan leaders first, she nodded, but I don't have any problem with that. In the meantime I suggest Rei stay here. Why? Yugao whispered in concern. Because unlike the hospital, Tsunade smirked, neither of you has anything you'll need in your apartments. Like diapers, formula, clothes, a crib, so until you can get set up, Rei can stay here, and you two are welcome to stay with her. Speaking of that, Yugao's cheeks colored slightly, and she leaned in and whispered something in Tsunade's ear. The medic's eyes widened, and she looked to Kakashi. His eye sparkled mischievously and he nodded his head. If that's what you want, Tsunade shrugged, I'll set something up for tomorrow. But in the meantime, you two should get some sleep. You both have tests to proctor in a few hours. And Kakashi might have a pretty tough day. The Hokage grinned smugly at the copy ninja, who groaned in response. Shikamaru, I'm glad you came. Come in, Jiraiya said broadly to the younger man. The apathetic Chunin ambled into the hospital room apprehensively. Good morning, Master Jiraiya, Shikamaru said carefully, not aware why he had been asked to visit the recovering shinobi. How is your physically therapy going? The teenage genius asked. Pretty good, the infamous pervert nodded, then he lowered his voice to a whisper and added conspiratorially, I'd be done with it by now, but I'm taking it slow because my nurse has huge. Is there a reason you had me sent here? Shikamaru interrupted, annoyed. Please, close the door, the Sannin instructed, sobering. Shikamaru, Jiraiya addressed him seriously, I'm told you're one of the brightest minds in the Hidden Leaf Village, if not the brightest. And that you're also quite the codebreaker. The Chunin smirked, and shrugged in false humility, so. Well, the Toad Sage frowned, before we begin, I should ask how you feel about blood oaths. I thinking they're a drag, the Nara heir responded predictably. Good answer, Jiraiya smiled slightly, in that case, just promise me you won't tell anyone what you're about to hear, and we can lie to the Hokage about the oath that I'm supposed to make you swear before discussing this with you. Shikamaru studied him for a few seconds, and then shrugged again and said, you have my word. Now, what's this all about? I'm sure you've heard about Sasuke surrendering his body to Orochimaru, Jiraiya started and Shikamaru nodded, his interest piqued. Well, there's more to the story than you know, the injured sage informed him, so far only clan leaders and a few other know the whole story. He proceeded to give the Cloud Envier a rundown of Itachi's real history, and of the fight against the new and improved Orochimaru. Sir Orochimaru killed Itachi, Shikamaru said softly as he digested the information. Then he bobbed his shoulders again, and asked, what does that have to do with me? There was something else, the Sannin admitted, something we didn't tell the clan leaders or even Naruto and Kakashi. You'll be the only one who knows this besides myself and the Hokage. During the latter part of the fight, the older ninja frowned in memory. After Orochimaru paralyzed me and set me up to watch him kill Itachi, I noticed the snake was using some pretty fancy footwork. I'm fairly familiar with Orochimaru's fighting style, and his legs are generally the last things he worries about. He tends to focus on ninjutsu and that sword of his. He usually doesn't even take a single step unless someone attacks his legs or moves out of range. That was when I noticed his toes were tracing characters in the dirt. It was about the same time I figured out Sasuke was no longer ordering Orochimaru to stop. So, you think Sasuke was directing Orochimaru's feet to send you a message? Shikamaru mused, rubbing his chin, since Orochimaru doesn't use his legs, and Sasuke only swore not to interfere if Orochimaru fought Naruto, Sakura, or Kakashi-sensei. Yes, Jiraiya nodded. I suspect Sasuke was able to influence Orochimaru's footwork to try to send me a message. This message. He took out a piece of paper, and handed it to the younger man. Shikamaru studied it for a minute, before handing it back. It looks like gibberish, the Chunin noted with a yawn, but given your attempts at flattery, I assume you think it is encoded. Jiraiya nodded. And have you considered that this might be a trap? The lazy shinobi asked the Sannin, that Orochimaru wrote this message to trick you, or even just to mess with you. We have, the Toad Summoner admitted. In fact, the Hokage is certain of that fact. But I convinced her we should at least decode the message before we discard it. It took a bit of a guilt trip, but I talked her into letting me have you help figure out what this says. I don't suppose I have a say in the matter, Shikamaru sighed. Not since you promised to keep this a secret. Well then, we might as well get to work. The apathetic young man began to look more carefully at the string of characters. Well, Anko Mitarashi smirked as Hinata Hyuga entered the small clearing, the first victim of the day, right on time. Anko, Hinata inclined her head politely. Alright, maggot, here's how this works. The Jonin started pointedly, to test your stealth and tracking skills, we're gonna play the old classic, hide and seek. The proctor picked up the bizarre-looking helmet sitting on the ground beside her. This blocks all visual, auditory, and olfactory stimuli, Mitarashi explained, even your vaunted Byakugan. I'll be creating 3 shadow clones, 1 to watch you and 2 to hide with me. After 10 minutes, the clone here will take the helmet off you, and dissipate to let me know you are coming. Then you have 75 minutes to find the 3 of me. To be fair, I will be leaving a few traces for you to follow. Then, if you pass the first part, we'll switch places for the second part. While you're hiding, if at least one of your copies can avoid capture, you'll pass the test. And you don't have to leave a trail for me. You better do your best to stay hidden. Oh, and other than jutsu to enhance your senses, no ninjutsu or genjutsu are allowed. Anko paused for a second and then added for good measure, or taijutsu or weapons jutsu for that matter. The same will go for me. What about traps? Hinata prompted, remembering Kakashi's tests. So long as you don't cheat and use a jutsu to set him up, go to town. Anko shrugged. I'd say your time would be better spent other ways, but if you think it will help, anything else? No. Hinata shook her head. Good. The serpent summoner handed her the hood, and then split in 4. 10 minutes starts once you tighten the strap, Anko told her, and one of the clones moved to stand next to Hinata. The younger Kunoichi nodded. Good luck, Mitarashi offered condescendingly, as the Hyuga heiress lowered the helm into place. True to the description, the aspirant could no longer see or hear, and could only smell the dull metallic tang of the mask. She activated her Kekkei Genkai, and then went to the advanced form, but she was still blind. Hinata had to take a deep breath and force herself to relax. Being unable to see was a new experience and an unsettling one. Though she slept in total darkness like most of her clan, and had consented to be blindfolded in the past, this was the first time she had been in a situation where she could not regain her sight if she wanted to. She tried counting to keep track of the time, but the feeling of her anxious heartbeat interfered, and she could not tell if she was counting too fast or too slow. Finally, she felt unexpectedly gentle hands touch her neck and shoulders, and the helmet was removed. The clone of Anko set the device on the ground, and winked at Hinata. Have fun, she smirked, before disappearing in a puff of chakra. Suijin Byakugan, Hinata quickly placed her palms together and activated her bloodline trait. She instantly picked up on the 3 trails, 2 leading north and 1 leading south. Obviously she was meant to follow the northern tracks first, but the kunoichi pushed her enhanced vision further and saw that one of the northern trails ended, while the other thinned as it turned to the left. She studied the trail that abruptly stopped and realized it was deeper and more noticeable than the other 2. She doubled back, Hinata whispered to herself, but where? Broadening her focus again, she saw a branch higher up in one of the trees had been unnaturally bent. Okay, Hinata nodded to herself, and turned to the south. As with the other 2 paths, after the initial indication, it rapidly grew fainter. But not faint enough to fool Hinata. The young woman ignored the broken branches and disturbed leaves, and instead watched for Anko's footprints. She's better than I am, Hinata admitted to herself, by a decent margin. She's probably as good as Kakashi-sensei, Yugao-sensei, or any of the Anbu members. The footprints suddenly came to an end. Hinata glanced about for any continuation of the trail, but there was none. Nor was there any indication the examiner had doubled back again. Then Hinata smiled slightly. There was something I forgot to ask you, Anko, the Chunin announced. What do I need to do when I find you? Do I have to tag you, or is it just enough to let you know that I have caught you? I assume I am not allowed to attack you physically, like in the Genjutsu exam. There was no answer, and so Hinata pointed as her eyes widened. You are in the maple tree 7.8 meters to my 2 o'clock, the Hyuga sign told the forest, on the 3rd branch up, under a chameleon tarp. Do I need to come over there and reveal you directly? I guess not, Anko said sourly, sweeping off the concealing cloth, but for the other 2 and for when you are hiding, yes, tagging will be the indicator. Hinata nodded and the clone exploded. 12 minutes, the candidate for advancement noted, that leaves me just over an hour to find the other 2. She turned about and headed back to the home base, clearing at top speed. But she still kept careful track of the woods around her, just in case one of the other Ankos had changed direction. But she caught no hint of the Jonin, and when she reached their starting point, she briefly pondering the northeast trail and the western tracks. Making up her mind, she jumped into the trees to her left, landing right next to the footprint of the Anko that had laid the false trail. Looking forward, Hinata saw a branch bent low, with a chunk of the bark knocked loose to the north. But she realized the break in the tree's skin was too sharp, and the tree limb had been pushed down by something far lighter than Anko. So she continued to look around, and saw deflection marks on a tree slightly south of due west. She jumped there, to here, Hinata tallied in her head as she followed the imprints, and she is moving higher. Which means, as Hinata expected, the tracks through the trees stopped. The pale beauty turned her attention downwards, and quickly found Anko's new trail heading south on the ground. The white-eyed Chunin dropped to the ground. Anko's trail became erratic, switching directions every 100 feet or so, as if she was hoping to catch the younger kunoichi napping, or at least force her to slow down. Despite this, the Jonin's trail was as faint as before, and even with her Byakugan, Hinata found following her target challenging. Hinata dropped to a walk when she saw Anko resting against a sturdy oak. Suspecting a trap, she approached her tester cautiously. No need to hold back, Mitarashi smirked, this isn't a combat test. And this was the hard-to-follow trail, so I usually don't hide. Though I suppose maybe I should have, considering who's following me. Hinata closed the distance and tapped Hisashi's student on the shoulder. But this Anko didn't vanish. This one only took you 14 minutes. Anko tried not to sound too angry. Maybe you should pace yourself. You know, try not to totally humiliate the proctor. The pursuing kunoichi's head dropped and she mumbled something incoherently. I'll see you back at the clearing, the real Jonin sighed, not having intended to punish the girl for succeeding. But as she ran off, Hinata kept pace with her. The elder daughter of Hiashi kept her eyes focused ahead and her mouth timidly closed. Are you sure it's a good idea to follow me? The curse-marked woman asked, with a hint of sarcasm in her voice. I could be leading you the wrong way. Without saying a word, Hinata picked up speed, leaving the Jonin behind. Guess not, Anko said as Hinata faded into the brush. One of these days I have to get Iruka to teach me how to deal with teenage girls. Hinata reached the sensory deprivation helmet slightly out of breath and thoroughly conflicted. I need to do my best, right? She asked herself, but I don't want to upset Anko. The still somewhat withdrawn young woman stood there, staring at the last trail. The wind had picked up, and was starting to shift the leaves, covering the route the last clone of Mitarashi had taken. Hinata heard the other woman enter the clearing, but did not react. Listen, kid, Anko started in an oddly uncomfortable tone, I got one hell of a temper, and don't like getting shown up. But that's no reason not to break me like a cheap shuriken. This is your test, and I'm not going to be so petty as to fail you just, 'cause you find all my copies in under 40 minutes. It just means I'll have to show you up in the second part, okay? If you can, Hinata said softly, drawing on that safe place within his regard. Fair enough, the Jonin chuckled, now shouldn't you get going? Yes. Hinata smiled slightly at her examiner in thanks, and then darted north towards the fading tracks. Anko picked up the helmet and spun it in her hands. Yeah, she's got my number, Anko sighed again, but I think I handled that pretty well. Even with the breeze interfering, this trail was the most obvious of the three, and Hinata quickly figured out why. On this path, Anko's clone had been running full out, sacrificing stealth for speed. Still the Jonin's trail was very faint, and the 16-year-old doubt anyone without a dojutsu or advanced sense of smell could have followed it at the speed with which she maneuvered through the trees. That thought inspired two others, a curiosity about how Kiba and Shino were faring, and a relief that Naruto had Guy's skill test instead of Anko's. Allowing herself to be distracted by her musings, Hinata almost continued her jog after the tracks ended. The Hyuga heiress skidded to a halt in a most Uzumaki-like fashion, and began to look around. She chided herself, knowing that the human instinct to moving her head to shift her vision was unnecessary and was considered unbecoming of a Hyuga shinobi. Then she chided herself again, for allowing her internal monologue to disrupt her focus again. Spreading her vision as far as she could, Hinata could not see another mark on the ground or in the trees. Nor could she spot another chameleon tarp, or the skeletal or chakra systems of a human being. It was like the shadow clone had just disappeared. Anko wouldn't do that, right? She pondered, that would be cheating. Maybe I have been underestimating her this whole time. She took a few steps in each direction, centering on the end of the footprints, trying to push her quicksilver eyes to see even farther, burning through her chakra. Then she relaxed, not wanting to take a food pill before the second part of the test. She's gone, Hinata lamented, but she can't be. I have to be missing something. The Chunin tilted her head back, staring into the sky as she sighed. Then she realized what she was doing, and her eyes widened. Even with all-around vision, we still tend to focus on the horizontal, she told the universe, and like most other people, we still forget to look up and down. She leaned forward symbolically, her Byakugan having already pierced the ground and found the skeleton and chakra system of shadow clone Anko. The duplicate sighed, even as Hinata dug into the ground to tap her tester on the chest. Anko's head emerged with a wry grin. I thought I had you there, maggot, the proctor said ironically, but at least it took you longer to find me than it did the first one. So I guess you better get moving. Hinata rotated her face back and forth gently, knowing there was no way for the clone to know what had happened to the original. You already found the solid one. Anko blinked in surprise. Hinata nodded, and the copy shook her head. Then I guess this is game over, the facsimile dismissed herself with a frown. Smiling slightly in triumph, Hinata stretched, and started her run back to the real Anko. 36 minutes and 14 seconds, the Jonin announced as the Chunin entered the field, less than half your allotted time, and easily the best showing so far. Then Anko's visage turned joyfully savage. Are you ready to run, little rabbit? Just 1 second, please, Hinata requested. As she had decided earlier, she took out the small tablet and quickly gulped it down. Yeah, good call. Mitarashi acted in kind, relaxing, holding onto clones for that long can be pretty draining. As is the Byakugan, Hinata agreed. Okay, now are you ready? Anko prompted again. Yes, Hinata said in quadruplicate. Good. Anko stared him down as she retrieved her cellula. It's 8:40 now, which makes it easier to track the times. So I'll be seeing one of you at 8:50, the others a few minutes thereafter. Despite her best efforts, the Hinatas shuddered from her tone, and took an instant to pity Ino, Shikamaru, and Choji. You better go, the Jonin cautioned before she strapped the hood into place. Unlike her examinee, Anko was used to the sensory deprivation, and began carefully ticking off the seconds. Not that she expected Hinata to take advantage of her, but others had tried, and it was only fair to hold the honest young woman to the same standards. After the lead time had expired, Anko freed herself, and dropped the helm unceremoniously on the ground. You'll forgive if I don't wish you good luck, Hinata said softly before vanishing to send her knowledge to the other three. Anko was signing even as the smoke cleared. Ninja arts, obsessive eyes jutsu, she activated her first support genjutsu, then followed it up with ninja arts, nose of the bloodhound jutsu. Like an advanced version of the children's puzzle, Anko's enhanced orb sought out any changes in the landscape around her. At the same time, her empowered nose drank in Hinata's pheromones, helping Anko determine the girl's course. There were 3 visible trails, one leading north, one south, and one east. Anko recognized that Hinata's northern route reused her own aborted path. Cute, but not good enough, Anko selected that set of tracks to follow. As the experienced woman expected, Hinata's path continued past her original reversal point. Reusing the heavy tracks was just a weak ploy by the girl to cover her own footpath. But after only another half mile, then trail vanished. Mitarashi sniffed at the air. Hinata had paused here, but the scent was not strong enough to indicate the target was close by. A few more deep breaths didn't reveal the Hyuga girl's direction, and Anko frowned. Then she remembered the trick she had used after doubling back, and looked up. Sure enough, there were marks on the trees from where Hinata took to the foliage. A few quick hops later, and Anko was on a branch looking back to the south. Surprised, the examiner followed the footprints on the limbs back to the clearing. She came back, Anko mused, but that leaves only 2 set of paths from her, and neither looks doubled up. As she considered, Anko felt a slight respect growing for the girl. This little detour had taken 7 minutes, and now she was racked with indecision. She took a deep breath and let it out as a sigh, but in doing so she noticed something. Anko realized Hinata's odor had barely dissipated at all while she had been following the false trail. She sniffed again, verifying it was more than just the time Hinata had spent in and out of the clearing over the last hour. No, she's definitely been here recently, Anko decided, no, she wouldn't. Although, it would be an unexpected tactic. She wandered around the perimeter, staring into the woods and twitching her nose for hints of Hinata's scent. Then she suddenly turned back, kneeling down, and flicking the trunk of a tree, hard. Ow! The voice of Hinata Hyuga emerged from under the facade, and Anko grabbed the chameleon top, scattering the leaves and branches strewn across it. Tag, Anko said smugly, and it only took me 9 minutes. Hinata nodded sadly, and then the clone broke apart, sending news of her defeat to her comrades. Anko stood back up, and addressed the other 2 paths. East or south? Anko debated, the trail going east is more obvious, which could mean she wants me to follow it. Or it could mean she was trying to trick me into not following it. Or that whichever Hinata went east piled the twigs and leaves on the one hiding here and was in more of a hurry. Then she smirked ironically, or that she wanted me to sit here debating her motives. Whatever. With that proclamation, Anko charged east. But after the first few hundred feet, she was forced to slow down as the trail split in 3. One continued due east, one veered slightly north, and the last turned sharply south. All 3 looked real, but only one had a solid scent tack, so Anko followed the northeastern path. So it continued. Every 100 meters or so the path would split in 2 or 3, obliging the Jonin to pause and use her olfactory genjutsu to determine Hinata's true course. What? Is she planning to go all the way to the land of waves? Anko groused to herself after the 14th such split. Despite occasionally diverting north or south, the Chunin's evasion had tended towards the east. But at the next split, Mitarashi hit a new roadblock. Of the 3 paths, none contained Hinata's gentle aroma. The proctor grimaced, and dashed down the middle path, which again was heading in a purely easterly direction. But after only 80 feet, the trail ended, and Anko was forced to backtrack. This time she chose the left branch, and was rewarded by it continuing onwards, until the next fork. How did she do this in 10 minutes? How could she run this far and lay so many false trails? Anko frowned in annoyance. The Jonin decided to bend her rules, and activated an illusion to mask any pain or exhaustion she might be feeling. This would allow her to run at full speed and concentrate more easily, even if she became tired or sore. And because the technique was altering her own sense of touch, she judged it as within the guidelines she had set. She picked up speed, and sprinted through the trees. After 19 more splits, Anko saw her. Hinata was standing at the next fork, panting slightly. The younger woman held a flat piece of stone, approximately 1 foot in diameter and with a cord tied around it. The Hyuga heiress flung the stone sidearm, causing it to skip across the ground, disrupting the foliage and creating marks that looked remarkably similar to the ball of her foot only, tracks that Hinata left behind when she strode at high speed. When the rock reached the end of the rope, the Chunin yanked it back, just barely catching it in her fatigue. So that's how you did that, Anko announced, pretty clever. Hinata spun back around, to look at her tester. The mischievous woman also noted the skin on the younger kunoichi's hands was raw from throwing and catching the weight. But you didn't do all of this in 10 minutes, Mitarashi admonished. You didn't say we had to stop and hide after you started looking, Hinata counted carefully, and sometimes the best way to evade someone is to not stop and wait for them to catch you. Anko looked like she'd been slapped. But then she smirked and admitted, true enough. But I have you now. No, Anko, you don't. Hinata again challenged her gently, check the time. Her expression turned dark, and the staff blade user practically tore her jacket, yanking her phone out of her pocket. The digital display read 10:08, but as she watched blinked over to 10:09. Time's up, Anko admitted sourly. Then she exhaled to regain control of her emotions, and asked, are you the real one? The duplicate shook her head, no. Then get out of here, and tell Hinata to meet me back in the clearing. The clone, and her copy of Hinata's cable disappeared, and the stone she was carrying fell to the ground. No longer troubled by the limitations on of test, Anko took a chakra restorative, and sent energy to her legs both to recover the strain she had put him through, and the enhance her performance on the way back to the starting point of the test. Despite length of the chase the clone had lead her on, Anko was back to the break in the woods before Hinata. She collected the helmet, and sat down to wait. To her amazement, and slight irritation, the younger woman took almost 10 minutes to arrive. When she did, the Jonin stood up, and glared at her. Where were you? The snake summoner demanded, the land of tea. Actually, Hinata began nervously. Naruto almost jumped when his front door swung inwards. The blonde Chunin had moved one of the love seats and the coffee table aside, and was practicing a katana form in the empty space wielding the awesome, deadly paper towel tube. He spun around, brandishing his weapon, menacingly, until he recognized the form of his girlfriend, standing in the portal. Hinata. He goggled, lowering his sword. Aren't you supposed to be having the stealth test with Anko-sensei? Or is it done already? Actually, she grinned at him, obviously self-satisfied, I'm in the middle of it. We're playing hide and seek. So, can I hide here for the next 70 minutes? She stepped inside, closing the door, staring at him suggestively. Sure. Naruto smirked back, but what do you want to do for the next hour? I just want to watch you practice, she said, and his expression turned to one of disappointment, until she added, though I think you might find it easier to move around without that shirt. You might be right, he agreed happily, obliging her. You went to Naruto's place for a quickie. Anko exploded. No, we didn't, we haven't, we don't, Hinata stammered. Then she took a second to compose herself. You never said the village was off limits, she explained, and it's always easier to get lost in a crowd. Besides, I thought Naruto's condo was the last place you would expect me to go if you were looking for me. Anko continued to glare at Hinata until she could no longer hold her composure. The Jonin burst out laughing, eventually dropping the helmet to clutch her sides. Gods, Hinata, she guffawed, I never thought you'd be the one to make me change my rules for the next time I have to do this. When Kakashi pulled out that note card for my taijutsu trail 2 years ago, I thought he was being anal. But now I can see why he does it. I'm just glad Guy has to deal with Naruto and Shikaku. I can only imagine what those two would put me through. Anko. Hinata walked over carefully, concerned by the Jonin's fits of mirth. I'm okay, Mitarashi wheezed, finally regaining control. She straightened, and addressed the Chunin directly, still struggling to keep a straight face. Congratulations, Hinata, she said, take a deep breath to keep from giggling, you have passed the stealth and tracking pillar of the Jonin trials. Thank you, Hinata bowed deeply. Now get out of here before you make me collapse a lung, she ordered. With no further prompting, the younger woman ran off. She went to Naruto's, Anko chuckled, and made him practice in his underwear. Wait, till Iruka hears about this. Even as gap between them widened, Hinata heard peals of laughter erupting from the forest behind her. You slipped up on the waterfall cutting technique, Temari told Naruto abruptly as he finished, and your 6 stars kata was sloppy. But overall, I have to give your katana style a B ranking. Naruto nodded and replaced the blunted, practice blade on the rack. But Temari continued to stare at him expectantly. What? He asked self-consciously. The requirements are 2 A ranks weapons, 2 B rank weapons, and 4 C rank weapons, the Sand Jonin explained, and with 4 A and 6 B styles, you've pretty much blown that away, even with the devaluing of light throwing blades. But I was hoping to see your real weapon. He did not respond, and she pressed him, why haven't you shown me the staff blade, Naruto? Well, we don't have one here, he pointed at the racks of sparring weapons with a weak grin. Temari gave him a dubious look, and he sighed again. To be honest, I wasn't expecting to exhibit the staff blade, he admitted, it doesn't have a formalized style, and anyway most people just dismiss it as a stand-in for training with other weapons. I mean that is part of why I like it, he added defensively, most of those moves and forms I know for the longsword, katana, short sword, jian, mace, and even the tonfa and short spear, they all can be easily translated into the staff blade. That's also part of the reason I was able to get so good with so many weapons in the last year or so. Well, Naruto, Temari looked kindly at him, as her fan appeared, I'm certainly not one to deride you for an unusual weapon. No, I suppose not, he chuckled. She swung the fan over her shoulder, and pointed it at him. So will you show me? Though phrased as a question, her tone made it sound more like a command. How? He asked. Like I said, there's no set style. Half my moves come from other weapons. So it's not like I can prove anything. You can prove the staff blade the same way I proved the fan, she told him, you spar against someone, until you beat an acknowledgement of your skill into them. Spar? He asked, but there still isn't a training staff blade here. So you use your kitsune, and I use my fan, she ordered him, no ninjutsu or genjutsu, and as little taijutsu as you can. Just weapon against weapon. Since part of being an expert is having control, if you're really as good as the rumors say, you should be able to mock a fight without hurting me. She flicked her wrist, partially opening her weapon, just so you know, I am considered an S-rank fighter with my weapon of choice. So you better not hold back. Oh, I wouldn't worry about that, Naruto smirked. Like the kunoichi, Uzumaki summoned his weapon without any outside indication he was going to do so. Kitsune appeared, scabbard and all, across his back. He smoothly drew the tubular blade, and assumed a fighting stance. He extended Kitsune lightly in his right hand, keeping his left free and balanced. That's the Jian's fighting stance, she considered, which means if I attack hard, he will redirect me and I can use that to turn back for a quick shot to the head. Temari swung her fan sideways at Naruto's chest, and as she expected, the staff blade flicked out to intercept. But contrary to her reasoning and his posture, the Chunin absorbed the blow, and once her attack had been fully aborted, he drove the point of her weapon towards the ground. Once she was off balance, he swung his arm back and stopped Kitsune just short of her chin. You probably don't want to underestimate me, either, he informed her, annoyed. Sorry, Naruto, she said sincerely, then her eyes grew hard as well, it won't happen again. Right, it's a fusion of other weapon styles and unique moves, she chided herself, so a katana stance could easily lead into a mace or short sword type maneuver. Temari lashed out horizontally again, but this time when he stopped her cold, she expanded her fan further, and flipped it over his weapon, trying to score fictional scratches on his chest with the spines at the end each slat. He responded by pushing both of their weapons high, and stepping in, jabbing the vulpine hilt of his creation towards her solar plexus. She caught his wrist with her left hand, but he was too strong for her to stop, so she pushed off, moving away. He countered by stabbing at her neck, but she blocked the attack with her fan and was knocked back for the effort. Temari flipped backwards as she regained her feet, sweeping her fan up in a move that nearly caught Naruto off guard, but he managed to step back at the last minute. She brought the weapon back down, as if to smack the top of head, but he blocked strike. He turned his blade over, pushing her weapon down as he stepped out of the way. He finished the rotation, striking the flat of the fan with Kitsune, sending a vibration through the weapon, numbing her hands. I guess I still owe you an apology, Naruto, she offered, even as she stabbed out, quickly opening the fan when he tried to block. I think I need to stop testing you by rank, and just fight, she admitted. Does this mean we're starting? He asked with only a hint of mocking, because I've faced S-rank weapon users before, and this wasn't what I would expect. Fine, let's dance. Her eye twinkled happily, just don't blame me for what happens. She swung her fully opened fan, and when he tried to stop it, closed the weapon over the top of the pole, continuing her path. He tried to divert his weapon to knock her strike away, but he was just too late. Instead, he accepted the injury, in return for stabbing her in the shoulder. Temari stopped, raising her hand to indicate he should hold up as well. Uzumaki obliged, both were breathing hard and sweating profusely. What is it? He asked, are you okay? Each had lightly struck the other a handful of times, though Naruto's bruises and scrapes had quickly vanished. I'm fine, it's just, she paused, exhaling raggedly. Then she pointed to the wall. It's 6:13, she informed him, we ran over. He looked at the large clock hanging in the academy's sparring dojo number 3. Then he sheathed Kitsune, grinning sheepishly while rubbing the back of his head with his left hand. Sorry, I guess I got too caught up in the match, he apologized. No, it's my responsibility, she absolved him, I was having too much fun. It's been a while since I had a challenge like that. Thanks, he smiled broadly, you too. That will be all for this video, be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos, goodbye.